Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great.
Good.
So this week I have brought Winslow Homer, The Fox Hunt, 1893, and it lives in the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. Would you like to describe it?
Yes, so this amazing painting it's horizontal. It has very blue and turquoise tones. Overall, that's the first thing I see. Then there is a fox in the middle of the scene, quite close to the foreground. And the fox is like running through very dense snow on a kind of cliff. It's actually hard to see where because there's the sea is in the background. So
Mm.
the fox is turned away from us and running a kind of diagonal. And then above it there are two crows very close to it actually hovering over in flight and looking down at the fox. Behind that, there in the far right hand corner, there are more crows, a kind of silhouettes against the sky, and the sky is a dark blue grey, looks like a night sky, really. And then as I said, the sea in the background, but there's the horizon line, which looks as if it's got a reflection of the moon because it's very white, in parts. And then, yeah, I mean, a huge amount of the painting is this white of the snow, which is actually also has a lot of blues and some purples in it. Um, and then there's a couple of like cherry or berry branches coming out of it. So it's quite, I think the reason I'm partly struggling to describe it is because you look at it at first and you think, okay, it's a fox and some crows, but then there are so many planes to it, and also the colors really stand out with this blue turquoise and then the white. So yeah, it's a really fascinating image, and I'm excited to learn more.
It really captures how the snow throws off the colors of everything else, like with its brightness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yes, sorry, carry on.
that's fine. So The Fox Hunt is an 1893 painting by the American painter Winslow Homer. It's his largest single work, and some argue it's one of his best. He was born in 1836, and he's regarded as one of the greatest American painters of the 19th century. Born and raised in the Cambridge area of Boston, his mother was actually a talented amateur watercolorist and was his first teacher. He and his mother had a really close relationship throughout his whole life, and she tried to support him and was sort of there for him when anything he needed. And he was mostly a decent student, and he excelled obviously in art in particular. He had a pretty idyllic childhood. Where he grew up at the time was quite a rural area, although now it's massive urban centre. So
Yeah.
his father was a bit of a character. He was apparently very much into get rich quick schemes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he had a hardware store business, which he quit to pursue the California gold rush.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, and then when that failed, he went to Europe to raise funds for a variety of other schemes, which also didn't pay off.
Oh.
So I
With
think that
Winslow Homer as well, did they all go over to
No,
Europe?
I think his father just kept disappearing off to go and pursue financial schemes, which probably is why he was so close with his mother.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, and it probably had a bit of an impact on his attitude to work because he was sort of incredibly productive and hardworking. So I
Mm.
think it was kind of one of those cases of someone going the other way,
Yeah.
parent. One sensible thing that his father did do was get him into an apprenticeship with a commercial lithographer. Although that work wasn't very interesting, it did set him on the path to opening up his own studio in Boston and becoming an illustrator.
Okay.
He was actually an illustrator for 20 years. And this was at a time where the demand for illustrations was really high because obviously photography wasn't, common.
Yeah.
And new publications were constantly coming out and fashions were constantly changing. So to be an illustrator was an even more in-demand job than we'd imagine it to be today.
Yeah.
He worked for magazines such as Harper's Weekly, which is, I looked it up and it's one of the oldest general interest, was a weekly magazine. It's now a monthly magazine in America. So it
Mm.
still exists, but it's now monthly.
Is it called Harper's Monthly now?
Yeah, I think
I was
so.
going to say if they kept the original name, that would be crazy.
Yeah, weekly, but they do it monthly.
Yeah.
So his early works were mostly commercial wood engravings of urban
Okay.
and country social scenes. And they're characterized by clean outlines, simplified forms, and a dramatic contrast of light and dark with lively figure groupings.
So he was a printmaker.
Yeah,
That was what his illustrations were.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. And his quick success was mostly due to his strong understanding of graphic design and how adaptable his designs were to his wood engraving.
Mm,
I think he had like quite a productive output and was knew what to do,
yeah.
what he
I
was
mean,
commissioned.
even just looking at this painting in terms of the graphic appeal of it, and it's
Mm.
so stark and yeah, I can see that definitely.
And it's quite a common theme through his paintings when you look at them. You can see how they could be illustrations in a magazine if they weren't oil paintings on a large scale.
Yeah.
Right before moving to New York City, he went to stay with his family in Belmont, Massachusetts. His uncle, William Flagg Homer, owned an impressive house in the town that inspired Winslow to paint several of his early paintings, including his paintings of croquet players. And you can still tour the house. It's now like a museum house, the Winslow Homer
I
House,
love
or
a
Homer
museum
House.
house.
Love that. So then he moved to New York in 1859 and set up his studio in the 10th Street studio building. At the time, New York was the art and publishing capital of America, and he took some classes at the National Academy of Design and studied briefly with the French-American landscape painter Frederick Rondel, who gave him the basics of landscape painting. He self-trained like that for about a year, and his mother saw a lot of promise and even tried to raise funds so that he could study in Europe. However, at about the same time, the Civil War had broken out, and Harper's commissioned him to go to the front lines to illustrate what was going on in the
Oh my
American Civil War.
gosh.
There, he tried to sketch all aspects of what he saw from camp life to the battlefields. Although his drawings didn't gain much attention at the time, they did, however, reflect his transition from illustrator to painter, and he later began to work on paintings from his drawings at the front. Among some of those works were Sharpshooter on Picket Duty, Home Sweet Home, and Prisoners on the Front. And he continued to exhibit paintings on these subjects every year at the National Academy of Design from 1863 to 1866.
Wow.
Yeah, quite a commission.
Yeah, and just amazing to think that he was going to go to Europe and then ended up on the battlefield during the Civil War. And it's also, I know there was some photography at the time, but to just think that, that was a job that you were
Yeah,
commissioned. It's not a war photographer, but a war illustrator,
yeah,
and the way that images were working then.
yeah.
And
It's funny to think that was quicker and cheaper and easier
yeah,
than having a photographer come out and try and keep everyone still and get an image.
yeah, true, of course. Yeah. Wow.
Home Sweet Home was shown at the National Academy to exceptional critical acclaim, and it sold very quickly. He was consequently elected an associate academician and later a full academician in 1865. It's thought that that work launched him as a professional painter in oils. He did also continue selling his illustrations to other periodicals, though, for quite a while longer.
Mhm.
One critic wrote, Winslow Homer is one of those few young artists who make a decided impression of their power with their very first contributions to the Academy. He at this moment wields a better pencil, models better, colours better than many whom, were it not improper, we could mention as regular contributors to the Academy.
Mm. So he was a bit of a star.
A little bit, yes. I think
Yeah.
this is sort of a theme with him, is that during his life he had a lot of critical acclaim and but struggled financially and with success.
Okay. So
Probably
at
because he doesn't come from money.
okay, yeah. So at this time he was recognized for his talents, but it wasn't necessarily translating into financial.
No, and he's still
Okay.
illustrating as well
Yeah.
to pay his way.
Hmm.
Um, so the quote continues. Oh, about the painting's Home Sweet Home specifically, the critic went on to say there's no claptrap about it. The delicacy and strength of emotion which reign throughout this little picture are not surpassed in the whole exhibition. It's a real work of feeling, soldiers in camp listening to the evening band and thinking of the wives and darlings far away. There is no strained effect in it, no sentimentality, but a homely actuality, broadly, freely and simply worked out.
Nice.
So I'm guessing there was probably quite a lot of, thinking of our darlings sort of twee imagery around at the time, and they sort of felt that Homer's interpretation was a little more realistic.
Yeah.
So he did eventually get to travel to Paris in 1867, and he
Oh,
spent a year there. Again, he didn't study formally, and he did continue to paint and work for Harper's, depicting scenes of life in Paris. He worked on about 12 small paintings while in Paris. Despite the changing fashions in the art world at the time, he actually aligned himself more with the old school, with Millet and the Barbizon school, rather than explore styles and contemporary subjects like Manet or Courbet.
interesting.
Mm. So although he had an interest in depicting natural light, like that of the Impressionists, there's no inference that they were actually influential to him because he'd already established his own style through his like self-taught manner in the US, and he was very private and he didn't talk a lot about his methods or influences, and he even denied his first biographer any personal information or commentary.
Wow. Yeah, so he kind of knew by that point, I guess, in Paris, he kind of knew a bit more of what his own style was and I can see that Millet and more of the realist painters in France from that period, I can see in this painting as well. Not that this is necessarily realist, obviously that kind of it's hard to always categorize in those terms.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's not that helpful, but I can see that maybe trying, yeah, it makes sense thinking about Millet or say Manet or Monet and the Impressionists that he might have aligned a bit more with the realists, especially after the Civil War, I
yeah,
would
and I
say.
can't imagine what kind of reception he would have had if he brought Impressionism back to America. Like, and obviously he was financially and commercially concerned because he had to support
Mm.
himself and family. And, I don't know that it would have been very beneficial to him to be massively inspired by the Impressionists at that time in the US.
No, that's true. And was he part of a group, say, in America? Because so far what you said sounds like he's
He was quite a lone wolf. He
quite a
did
lone
teach a
wolf,
little
yeah.
bit, but he was quite on his own.
Mm, yeah.
I think particularly because he didn't study at an art school specifically, so he didn't have a cohort or a group that he worked
That's true.
alongside. His fellow artist Eugene Benson wrote, Homer believed that artists should never look at pictures, but should stutter in a language of their own.
Ah, lone wolf then.
Yes. So it's quite interesting, the idea that you shouldn't, I don't believe you should never look at pictures, but I think it is quite idealistic. We should all be stuttering in a language of our own. It's like, well, everyone wants to, but sometimes I don't think people can really help when things drift in and out of their
No, and
thinking.
also stutter in a language of our own is quite an interesting way of phrasing it because it's almost implying that there's difficulty in that or it's hard to communicate in that own language. I
Yeah, like
mean,
it's easy to be influenced by others, but it's harder to have original work.
yeah, I'm not sure I agree with his fellow artist, but it's an
No.
interesting you're like you say, it sounds like more of an ideal,
Hmm.
then, well, you're not living in a vacuum, whether you like it or not.
Well, you kind of do need to look up pictures by other artists to know whether you're having a language of your own or whether you're doing
Yeah,
something that's already been
exactly.
done.
Yeah, so true.
In 1875, he quit working as an illustrator and vowed to make a living from his paintings alone. And this did lead him to be financially unstable, despite his critical acclaim. He did have some critics, however, who didn't like him. Henry James was not a fan. I haven't included the quote, but it was pretty damning.
Whoa, okay.
His work at this time really reminds me of, do you know N.C. Wyeth?
No.
It's Andrew Wyeth's father, who was an illustrator
Hmm.
and painter, and it really reminds me of that. It has that
Hmm.
kind of painting with an undertone of illustration.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know, this is what I thought when I first saw it, because I kind of had seen N.C. Wyeth before and I hadn't looked that much at Homer, which is
Yeah.
very backward because Homer's far more famous. But there
Yeah.
we go. So he spent then went on to spend 2 years in the UK in the coastal village of Cullercoats in Northumberland.
Oh, I remember this now because I went to the Winslow Homer exhibition at the National Gallery, and that's one of the parts I really remember was about the fisher women
Yeah,
around there. Is that it? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So he produced work of working people, which were almost all watercolors, and they almost all depict the heroism of work. And his palette was a lot more somber than his previous work, and it actually gained him a lot of praise when he took the work back to the US.
Mm.
Maybe it looked more serious, I don't know.
Mm.
And even before he left for the UK, he'd become quite reclusive. He was always single. He didn't marry, but he desired a pretty solitary life. He was no longer enjoying urban social life and even lived in secluded Eastern Point Lighthouse with the keeper's family for a time before he went to the UK.
See, that makes me think that when he went to the UK into the fishing village there, he'd already had that experience of the sea and the lighthouse in that way,
Mm.
being really
There's a
close
quote.
to the sea.
There's a quote from him about saving painting rocks for when you're in old age because it's an easy thing to paint or something.
That's a good point,
And he
actually.
did, like his last paintings are all of the sea.
His seascapes, actually, and in this painting, to the left of it, you can see in the background that it's not just the sea, but it's also the crashing waves, which I hadn't noticed, but they're always, because they're quite small in the
Yes.
background. But yeah, he loved the sea and crashing waves and rocks and things like that. Yeah.
When he returned from Northumberland, he moved to Prout's Neck in Maine, which is a coastal peninsula, and he lived at his family's estate in a remodeled carriage house, which was only 75 feet from the ocean.
Mhm.
And during the rest of the mid-1880s, he painted his monumental sea scenes like the Undertow, which is very well known today. Again, despite his critical recognition, his work never really achieved the popularity of more traditional painters or of the society painters like Singer Sargent.
Mm.
Many of his sea pictures took years to sell, and the Undertow only sold for $400.
Wow.
Yeah. In 1893, he painted Today's Work, which is one of his most famous Darwinian works.
Hmm.
So I looked it up, and it's not like there's a Darwinian series, but everything that's written about this talks about it being one of his Darwinian works. So I kind of think that they were really into the idea of Darwin at the time, and anything with animals and hunting and like the sort of circle of life or anything like that was put in this excited about Darwin category.
Okay, so Darwinian was a term used at the time
I
then.
think so because it's not like I can Google Winslow Homer Darwinian works and there's like a selection of artworks that are specifically his Darwinian series.
Sure.
But every review, every sort of writing about the piece is mentioning it.
Mm.
So I think it was the theory of natural selection was very much on people's minds at the time.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, I haven't done my sources for today, so I'll do them at the end.
Oh yeah, of course.
I was like, everywhere I looked at all my sources. Wait.
I haven't said the moves. Yeah, no, that's fine. So how is this Darwinian then?
Well, the image depicts a flock of hungry crows circling a fox who is slowed by the deepness of the snow.
Okay.
So the idea is that the fox is struggling to find food and the crows are struggling to find food, and they're starting to circle the fox to see if he makes it.
Okay.
So it's one of his largest, and it was immediately purchased by the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, where it still lives. And it was also the first of his works to be acquired by an American museum.
So it was
Like,
acquired quickly.
yes, it was acquired quickly. Um, but yeah, this is quite late in his life. I mean, he this is 1893 and he died in 1910. So from his whole career, it's quite late for him, I guess.
Yeah.
The work was painted at his home in Prout's Neck, Maine, during the winter of 1893. According to the art historian and curator Nikolai Tchaikovsky Jr., Homer used a fox's pelt draped over a barrel in the snow to actually record the colour harmonies.
Mm,
And I assume that's a good way to understand how colours change when the light is coming off the snow and hitting objects, because it does create a strange, surreal light, and you couldn't just plop a fox with normal tones into that
yeah.
situation because it wouldn't look right. It would be too bright or too dull.
Yeah, that's such a good point, actually. That so he was doing it, he was painting outside then?
Yeah,
No? Yeah.
yeah. And another biographer wrote that he was supplied both the fox and crow carcasses by local hunters to paint from. And it said that he strung the crows from the trees to work from, but that gave him some difficulty because the snow was starting to thaw by then and the carcasses had become quite limp.
Oh. Wait,
And
but
when he
was he
showed,
hanging them up like
yeah,
in this position?
yeah, trying to get them to look like they were in flight, I think. So he
Wow.
had a friend who was a station master, Elbridge Oliver, and he showed the work to Oliver, and he
Mhm.
said that the crows don't look right. So after that, he and Oliver went to scatter corn to attract live crows for Homer to draw from, and those were the sketches that he ended up using for the final painting.
Oh, so he was drawing from live crows then for that.
Afterwards, yeah, so the ones in the painting are, because he redid it, so they're the ones that are from live crows.
Interesting. And this is what I find really interesting about, particularly with animal paintings or drawings. When we say drawn from life, it's so often that they're actually drawn from dead animals. Uh,
Yeah,
that's quite an interesting term, because yes, technically drawn from life, but they're dead.
yeah,
Um, so, but yeah, that's so fascinating that he then the dead models actually didn't really work, and he needed to draw from life.
yeah. I think they help with the like adjusting colours and
Yeah.
lighting, but they didn't help in terms of getting them to look real.
Yeah, the
And I guess,
poses and the movements.
yeah,
Mhm.
and I guess drawn from life just means that the object is in front of you
Yeah.
rather than that anything is particularly alive.
Yeah, it's just that I suppose with animals, there it can be whether they're dead or alive can kind of be inconsequential when we think about them.
Yeah,
But then for the animal, obviously, it's quite
very
consequential.
consequential.
Yeah. So the when you say barrel, do you mean like a big wooden barrel?
I assume so. It just said
Yeah.
over a barrel, so
And that worked for him though, because also the thing is the fox looks because we can't see the fox's face, it is a lot more about um the colours, I think.
mm,
Although the pose is a bit odd.
mm.
I don't
Well, I
know
also
what you
said with the
think.
colours because a fox is that orangey colour and then you've got the blue sky. It creates that like incredible contrast.
It is amazing. And the crows actually when you first said you're going to look at this image and I looked at it, I couldn't even see the crows particularly. It was
Mm,
like it was the wrong, now I'm looking at a more, I presume, more accurate reproduction of it. But yeah, they're quite dark in the sky, aren't they? You don't
yeah.
necessarily see them.
Well, there's quite a lot of pictures we look at, and particularly like we've looked at on the podcast that I keep thinking to myself, it's probably easier to see that in real life when you're actually in front of the painting.
For sure.
I
Yeah.
assume the crows are more there, like when you're actually in front of it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
because it's quite big as well. It's about I think it's 174 by 97-ish centimeters. So it's quite a big painting.
That is big, yeah.
So some critics interpret this as a self-portrait, which I think
Okay.
might be a little bit of a stretch, but we'll go with it. Homer being the lone fox.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have said lone wolf quite a lot. We could just say lone fox and
Yeah,
then there
he's a
you
lone
go.
fox. And another critic noted that the artist's signature is sinking like the fox into the deep snow, exactly mimicking its form and action. And he added that the fox's tail is repeated by the R in the signature, and the fox's tail is called a brush, and that there's like this sort of, I don't know, it sounds a little bit too far, but it's a nice idea.
Yeah, and if it helps us to understand or I guess connect with Winslow Homer as an artist, like what was his life and mentality at the time, then maybe it's helpful. But yeah, I would share the hesitation when it comes to saying it as yes, Winslow definitely made this as a self-portrait. That would
He
be a
saw
bit.
himself as a fox struggling through snow.
Yeah. And you could say that about any like you can find a self-portrait argument really in so many painters' works.
Yes, and this
If you
isn't his
want,
only
you know.
animal painting, so is he just the fox? Is he not the bear or the deer or the bird or anything else? It sort of
Yeah,
has to unravel a little when you look in like the wider context.
absolutely. Where is his signature though?
I think it's on the left in the corner.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it is sinking into the snow, which is quite cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
So it's thought that Homer was influenced by Japanese design in his paintings, and particularly in this one, with the suggestion being that you could divide it into three vertical panels, which would each work as standalone paintings, like a Japanese screen, which I sort of understand, but then the angle of the fox means that his bum is just in the panel on its own.
I was gonna say. Well, and also that his paw would be just in one
Yeah,
because basically the fox doesn't quite run across all of it,
yeah.
but also isn't ju doesn't just fit into the middle one. So
No,
that's
he overlaps other panels.
yeah,
So I don't really understand that one. I can kind of see maybe how it could be influenced by Japanese design and like
yeah,
the composition of Japanese prints or something, but I think it's a bit of a stretch to say it could be a panel because it doesn't, I don't think it divides.
yeah. I can definitely see it though, like you say. And there's certain details that aren't particularly symmetrical, but
Mm.
they have a balance in the rest. So like the berry branches coming out of the snow, and then with the above that with the waves in the background, and then there's a white bird
Yeah.
silhouetted against the sky. Like I can see that kind of balance and asymmetry is
Well, there's
reminds me
quite
of
a
it.
nice balance of the diagonal of the crow, the diagonal of the fox, and then the diagonal of the signature, and the angle of the snow
Yeah.
going up the hill. It's all quite
Yeah.
structured, which is quite pleasing as well, I guess. But I don't know that that's particularly Japanese.
I mean, you can see it's also he's a graphic designer and an illustrator. Like you said before, you
Yeah,
can see a lot of that. Yeah.
yeah. So he continued painting seascapes and scenes of the natural world until his death in 1910 at the age of 74, and he passed away in his studio at Prout's Neck. And the studio is now a National Historic Landmark and is owned by the Portland Museum of Art, so you can tour the studio as well.
Wow.
And something I found out after I'd written the episode, which I guess was interesting to me but may not be interesting to others, is that he was NC Wyeth was actually Homer's student and was greatly
Wow.
influenced by him, which then threads through to Andrew Wyeth and Jamie Wyeth, who still paints today. And they shared
Wow.
the influence and appreciation. They even followed Homer to Maine for influence for work. And his respect for his teacher was intense and absolute, apparently, and can be observed in his early work, The Mowing, of 1907. Perhaps it says Homer's persevering individualism is best expressed in his statement to artists. Homer said, "Look at nature, work independently, and solve your own problems."
Great. It's interesting that about his. because it's not just, we can project onto like the genius artist myth and all of that, but the fact that he was actually really perpetuating that and
Mm.
to stand for that in a way, at least for himself, like work on your own, get on with it.
Figure it out.
Yeah, figure it
Suffer in
out.
your own language.
Yeah, but then it really interesting that he did have these students and also connections. Inevitably, he was working with others in all of this. Like if you think about his early print and illustration career, like that was a whole collaborative
Yeah, and he had a gallery in
world.
New York. He was represented by, I think it's the Nodler Gallery. He
Mm,
had one in Boston, and then I think he swapped over to New York. So he wasn't. It's not sort of what you anticipate as like a folk artist or a self-taught artist. Like he had a lot of commercial success along with a lot of financial difficulty
yeah,
and struggle as well.
yeah. And going back to the Darwinian thing,
Mm.
was that in terms of him um you know, working independently. Because that's the other thing. It's not just not working with others or, being on your own in your studio, but it's also ideas and context at the time. And um, was he engaging in that? In the literature, is it saying that, he was interested in Darwinism and this,
I
or was it
didn't
more a
I didn't
general?
particularly find that. I didn't delve
Yeah.
too deep, but I did look it up, and I couldn't find anything saying that Homer was, obsessed with Darwin theory, or like that he
Yeah.
read every book and put the theories into his paintings, or made a particular series on purpose, or I don't know. So I don't know whether that's just something he said at the time and it stuck, or whether that was just an assumption at the time because that's what was interesting at the
Yeah.
time. I don't know. So that was a bit of a mystery to me because it
Mm.
comes up so much, but I couldn't find anything that really explained to me why.
Yeah, because then you have the thing of, is he, if he's wanting to work independently, well, he also needs to, he's consciously trying to sell his art and make a living through it. So then
Mm.
you can't really work independently completely because you're living in a society that, some people are going to want to buy it. You want to appeal to
Yeah, you can't be
certain
completely divorced
audiences.
from market expectations or
Yeah.
needing to
Yeah.
make money from it. Gosh,
Yeah.
I'm incredibly lucky.
Well, yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, it's really fascinating as a figure. He's quite mysterious in a way. I'm quite intrigued by him.
He isn't what I thought he'd be. I mean, I didn't know that much about him, but I was expecting him to have gone to an American fine art academy and then maybe have studied in Europe and then, been very
Yeah.
successful and sold his paintings and, a quite a sort of typical trajectory, but actually it was
Mm.
a bit more complex than that.
Yeah, and the lone wolf thing being then reflected or sought out in his paintings,
Mm,
particularly this one, is
yeah.
interesting because it's already, you can sense a myth was starting.
hmm Maybe he
I
was deciding what his legacy, should look like.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll just quickly do the sources
Oh
for today.
yes.
So the sources, we'll keep it short and sweet. Wikipedia, pages on the work and the artist.
Yeah,
WinslowHomer.org. Winslow Homer, a book by Nikolai Tchaikovsky, and the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts website.
great. I like winslowhomer.org.
Yeah, he has his own site.
Oh, it's very forward thinking of him.
It's ahead of the times.
Yeah.
He was a lone wolf doing his own
Yeah.
website.
Got his own. Yeah.